so I don't do the voice. Hello.
You could do it. Hello. I can't even know. We are very excited to have you.
Hello.
We'll save our podcast.
No, I don't do accent.
You are our last hope.
We need your help.
Okay, I just had the best at it so far.
That was pretty good. Yeah, that was really good. Leave that one in.
Hello, and welcome to Movies We Dig, the podcast about film, antiquity, and everything in between. I'm Christy Vogler.
I'm Elijah Fleming.
And I'm Colin McCormick.
And today we are continuing our short series of host favorite films with Colin's pick, Galaxy Quest. This film is a 1999 American satirical science fiction comedy directed by Dean Parisot and written by David Howard and Robert Gordon. It stars Tim Allen, Sigourney Weaver, Alan Rickman, Tony Shalhoub, Sam Rockwell, and Daryl Mitchell. I don't know where to go from there.
We could keep going with that, right? Because it's also got Missy Pyle and
Please, yeah. I got
Justin Long and a lot. There's a pretty weirdly deep cast.
Yeah, and as I was telling, it's like a few of these characters I know as being the dad of other characters, like Veronica Mars's dad. Tony is the father. He plays the father in Marvelous Ms. Maisel to Midge. So, like, I also know he's from Monk, yes, but like that's what I know him best from. And of course Tim Allen. If you grew up watching, Home Improvement.
Yeah, Home Improvement or the Santa Claus or like a whole host
the Santa
of
Claus,
90s like child-focused movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I this has nostalgia written all over it for, I think, all three of us. I think this is one of the films that all three of us had seen before, had some background with. So why don't we start with Colin? Colin, give us your history with this movie, and do you dig it?
Yeah, I know I said that Alien vs. Predator was the best movie ever made by human hands, but actually this might be my all-time top favorite movie. I don't know actually when I first saw it. I want to say a DVD because 1999, I feel like I would have been just a little bit too young. And I wasn't, ironically, this is kind of my first Star Trek film, which I know is a little backwards. I have since sort of gotten much, much more into Star Trek. But this was a movie that was on constant rotation in my house and DVD players. It's one of the first. It's one of those movies for me that I'll bring it up or I'll reference it. And somebody will be like, I don't know what you're talking about, and be like, stop whatever you're doing right now. We're watching Galaxy Quest. It is a sort of frame for how I interact with the world, and in terms of like, not a week goes by where I don't quote some part of it or think about a scene from it. Like anytime anyone opens the door, I just, kind of internally shout like, is there air? You don't know. And
one of my favorite scenes.
So yeah, and it's also fascinating to me that it's one just like on its own merit, just like a great film, and it's got like really fun performances and great jokes. It's also like kind of a running joke among Star Trek fans that this is the best Star Trek movie. It is sometimes kind of unofficially sort of admitted into the canon. And it's a film that like it sort of gets Star Trek. If you've watched any or some Star Trek, it just sort of gets it so thoroughly, but like the way the characters and the actors relate and the fans and the kinds of plots and things like that. Like, again, like a scene I quote all the time is whoever wrote this episode should die, or like what point, what functional purpose does this serve? Whenever you're like watching a movie or in a video game and there's a room full of like giant chomping things and you're like, what possible function, like what's the point of a room like this? So I don't want to say I could keep going about sort of my internal love for this movie, but I'll leave it at that. Other than that, this is maybe my favorite movie.
Yeah. How about you, Lige? What do you got for us?
I think I also watched this on DVD. Certainly not in theaters. I can't really put my finger on it, but I feel like I like went to Blockbuster and like rented this DVD. And I think I definitely did not really get it when I first watched it. I kind of had like some idea that it was supposed to be funny, but I didn't know Star Trek, so I was like, I don't fully understand. I don't fully get it. And I think I also wasn't like then interested in investigating further. I was like, okay, that was kind of fun.
You didn't really have like a
Weird.
great read on like who William Shatner was and like what his kind of like position in culture is.
Not really. I think my mom said something. She was like, yeah, it's like Star Trek. And I'm like, what? So that was my childhood without Star Trek. But watching it now, one, having like experienced a lot of Star Trek in like as an adult, but also like fan culture and how much more prevalent and mainstream that has become, I think is also really funny to see like the fan interactions and the convention aspect of it. And like the weird, I love Justin Long's character who just has this like encyclopedia knowledge of this TV show, and it like finally, is gonna save the day. And it's like everyone's dream. So I do really dig this movie. I think it's super fun and super silly. And I loved watching it.
Fun fact before we jump to Christy about Justin Long, at least according to Long himself, the sort of rumor is that the entire reason that character kind of exists is because of Steven Spielberg, who apparently just visited and sort of stopped in or like saw, I think, part of the script and was involved in the production kind of informally and recommended both Long and Missy Pyle's character, the kind of, I don't know, girl alien. I don't know how else to sort of describe her character, but both of those were Spielberg notes of like, these need to be more in the movie.
Nice.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I am pretty confident that I did see this movie in theaters. Like,
Ooh.
I would have just turned 11, but out of the recording studio, we were having the chat, and I'm just sitting here. I'm like, God, you guys, 99 was such a good year for movies. And we started going through all of them. It's like, I'm pretty sure I saw that in theater. I saw that in theater. And I'm like, who was taking me to all these movies as an 11-year-old? And were they age appropriate? Probably not. But like, man, did I have a good time.
I definitely saw Phantom Menace in theaters because I have a very clear memory of like, we went to a late showing. It was a whole thing. And the only seats open were like right in the front. And I was like craning my like child neck up to see the screen. And I remember when that spaceship blows up right in the first scene, it was like the most intense thing ever.
Yeah. And I know I saw The Mummy in theaters. I know, like I was talking about, it's like Mystery Men was another one I know I saw in theaters. And it's like, I know I saw Jurassic Park in theaters, and that came out like 3 years before. So I had been watching age inappropriate movie throughout the 90s. Thank you, parents. I love you for that, honestly. But this also, similar to Colin and probably Lige too, is like, it was also just like a go-to pick for going. We didn't even have a Blockbuster in my small town of Central Washington. We just had a local, it was called the Drift Inn, and it was about like a diner with an attached movie rental space to it. So that was kind of our go-to spot, and Galaxy Quest would have definitely been a VHS pick for us for a while there. And yeah, I can definitely say I dig this movie. I think what I really like about it, similar to both you guys, I was peripherally aware of Star Trek. My dad was into it, but I don't even think I'm that into it now, but like became more aware. I have seen the newest Star Trek movies with Chris Pine. Anthropologists love Star Trek. Like they are into it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not to bum you out, but those movies are like a decade old already.
I know. I looked at the date and I'm like, are you
First
kidding?
one came out in 2008 or 9, I think.
But so I have seen some Star Trek. Like I'm not completely oblivious. What I thought was so good about this movie, and this is kind of why I'm not a huge fan of Will Ferrell, is like this movie is a satirical look at sci-fi, but it is not over the top. Like my favorite scene to point to is when they tell Laredo to take it out of the starport and they're driving the ship, and like you can over the top that, right? Like with everyone freaking out that he's like scraping along the side, and instead everyone's just doing like the bleeding. and no one's
We're all
saying
gesturing.
everything.
Listeners, you can't see this, but we're all like leaning into the screen and like pointing with the finger.
And they're like, you know, no one is like, oh God, we're gonna die in that moment. It's just like, okay, yeah, here's a scenario where someone's been thrust into this moment that he can kind of do this thing, and he hasn't completely failed, but it isn't pretty. And everyone's reactions is like, that is exactly how you would react in that scenario. It's like, oh God, I hope we're gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine, and we've cleared.
It's like watching just a minor awkward fender bender in like a parking lot or something. Yes. Or like somebody like scrape their car along another car, and it's just like deeply awkward and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Oh. And I think of like a teenager like coming out of the garage for the first time, and we're all like the dad in the passenger seat, like this way, this way, this way, this way, this way.
Yeah, and so like it's humorous, it's funny without being over the top, which I get really down about comedy when Adam Sandler and Will Ferrell and some of these very over the top actors in their films become super popular, like, because then it feels too dumbed down to me. It feels like a little too ludicrous. And I like the humor of just how would normal people react in unrealistic situations, and it's funny. Like it makes perfect sense. Like the guy being like, what Colin said is like, they opened a door and it's like, is there air?
Yeah, one of the kind of
reasonable thing to ask in that moment.
I think one of the kind of calculations this movie kind of gets right is that it isn't there. So originally Harold Ramis was going to direct this, like of Ghostbusters, and it was kind of originally going to be more like Spaceballs or something like a more overt parody, like Men in Tights or Spaceballs or something like that. And the right calculation was, I think, actually to like play it kind of straight, where it is kind of just a sci-fi action movie in certain ways. But then it has this like the meta element to it. And like everything Sam Rockwell's character is doing.
I don't have the last name.
Yeah. Or just the part where he goes, did you guys even watch the show?
Yeah.
Well, I think about the scene where the aliens are in their normal form, so they're all like tentacled, and they're like coming in, and they're like, I'm so sorry, we forgot we weren't in human suits, and they're just standing there like freaking out, screaming. I'm like, yeah, that is how people would react to that ridiculous scene.
And then Tony's character, I forget what his character's name is because I just remember Tony now, but like
Quan.
He shows up like a moment later and he's like, all right, we're doing this. And he's like just so like into it, like accepting it. And I like that you have some characters that are like Tim Allen has a little bit of initial resistance, but then he's super excited to like be in this role because he gets to feel like the big person he's always wanted to be.
I would say I think this might be the best Tim Allen performance put to screen.
This is maybe one of my favorites.
Yeah. And so like you have a couple characters like that, and then you have like Sam Rockwell just doing the freak out. I think Laredo a little bit of this too, because he gets carried out.
He gets his arm broken. Style. Yeah.
His arm breaks. Like you have a good spectrum of reactions too. Like it's not all one or the other. So like, God, everyone just did Alan Rickman just being like, I'm going to play this like the Shakespeare play that it should be.
Yeah. And like, every line he says, like, you were never serious about the craft, and like, this juxtaposition, right, of like Tim Allen as a William Shatner kind of like bravado, just kind of in it for the fame, or just a little smug and cocksure. Across from him, like a very serious, like Juilliard actor, like almost like a sort of maybe like Patrick Stewart-esque, where he's like, I was King Lear or whatever. Like I'm a very famous, classically trained theater actor, and now I have to put on this stupid head thing and say the stupid line for all like every time he like dies a little bit inside. He has to say by Grabthar's hammer.
By Grabthar's hammer.
He's like, I will not say that line one more time.
So I was also going to say, Colin, you kind of last minute made this decision to go with this film instead of Last of Mohicans. And we were just kind of talking about how like, oh, well, it won't really fit the archaeology theme. I retract that statement because there is an element to this that lends itself to our broader theme of archaeology and then it plays in really well to our conversation of Alien versus Predators from last week, where we're like, the predators show up and we just adopt toxic masculinity.
Yep.
So I'm sure we'll get into that point in a little bit, because there is something to say about archaeology and historical records.
The historical documents.
Historical documents.
Yes.
Which, that just works out beautifully.
Yeah.
But does anyone want to give our audience a little plot summary?
Yeah, I can take a stab at it, right?
Go for it.
Where, I mean, it's pretty simply summed up, which is basically what if Star Trek but real, or rather, what if aliens watched Star Trek, thought it was real, recreated it, and then warped up the cast of Star Trek when they're in a crisis to save them. And that's basically the plot of the movie. Because you start with the cast of this show, Galaxy Quest, that is now sort of long canceled, but still has a thriving fan community. And they're kind of decades older, running on con circuits, jaded and washed up. And they get brought up by these aliens, the Thermians, to fight an evil guy named Saris, who is also named after a film critic.
No way.
Yes, he was named after the film critic Andrew Saris, and then the backup name was going to be Haskell, named after Andrew Saris's wife, Molly Haskell, also a film critic. Anyways, so they get beamed up, they struggle at first, and then come together, embrace their roles, explain to the aliens that they're actors, not space explorers, and defeat Saris.
Yeah.
And then and they come back and they land back into a Comic-Con convention,
where they incinerate Saris in front of everyone.
Yes.
And the practical special effects
are actually really good.
I think last week when we were recording, I made a sort of passing comment that this movie looks really good for a movie that I thought this movie honestly came out a few years later than it did, because it, the CGI I think holds up well. The costumes look great. Even there's a lot of CGI elements, like the little blue guys and the rock monster.
Yeah.
Those are all looking really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say, the little blue guys, again, that was one of those things I forgot was a thing. And the moment I saw them, cannibalization.
That's did you guys even watch the show?
Did you guys even watch the show? They're going to turn ugly, and they're going to teeth, and there's going to be more of them. And it was exactly right.
And it's so weird because their visual appearance is so similar to that one character in Phantom Menace, the one who owns Anakin and his mother.
Watto?
Oh, I mean,
maybe if you aged them up and gave them a bad.
Watto,
and then they're all weird precursors to Avatar down the line.
Oh God.
Maybe. Watto.
I don't quite see that.
I don't know if we want to open up the Watto can that is the can of worms that is Watto, but.
They were always very visually similar enough to me I don't know, but again, because they both came out in the same year, and they were both something me and my brother watched a bunch of. So I
think you're just being bluest.
Maybe. I have so few examples to work with. But yeah, no, that was a great summary. I want to go back to this idea of how we can tie it to archaeology just a little bit, because then I will let the nerds of Star Trek fly. But yeah, this premise of these aliens get the broadcast and they think of them as historical documents, historical records, and they recreate an entire ship based off of that. And to me, that is very similar to what historians and archaeologists are trying to do, right? I think the best example is Arthur Evans at Knossos.
Oh, sure.
And I think what's kind of interesting, and I'm curious, is because they have a visual documents of the ship and how people act and everything, they are able to reconstruct things almost perfectly, to a point of ridiculousness. As we pointed out, it's whoever wrote that scene with the
chompers.
The chompers, doesn't have to be included for the ship to actually function. Yeah. And I could definitely see an archaeologist being okay, we've got this visual representation. I have no idea what it's for. But obviously, it's the lustral basis obviously had a purpose and was needed.
Or else it wouldn't be here, right?
Yeah.
For listeners, what Christy is referring to is if you go to Minoan palaces, there's this structure usually kind of towards the center that's kind of a bathtub looking thing. It's like a rectangular inset, usually lined with like gypsum, but what it actually would have been for, because like it wouldn't have been watertight. So it like what its function is incredibly obscure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we call them lustral basins. And I think the main theory is there's some kind of purifying ritual or something.
Yeah. When in doubt, ritual.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And then, but like also the premise that, you know, these people are, the crew has to point out, I was like, well, they're actors. And so somehow this is all a lie. And I'm like, oh, that's so interesting of like how we have to deal with the past, especially like, I don't know, when you're doing like Greek and Roman stuff, you are so much contending with the legends and myths versus, you know, the lived realities of people. And when people ask you, well, it's like, well, is that real? These stories are set in a reality for the people who lived there, but yeah, so I don't know. You guys can unpack that further.
Yeah, I had a couple of thoughts as you were talking. One is there's a tendency and an impulse a lot, particularly for like when you're first approaching a material, to sort of take it with a reverence and a seriousness. And there's all sorts of contemporary cultural historical reasons why that might be, but there's always a danger or a thing you got to watch out, particularly if you're like in literary studies like me, of like the specter of like they might just be with me. Like taking anything at face value is always a little bit of a risky assumption. But there's also, I had another thought about just like the interestingness where very often, like for us, the past or archaeology or literature or whatever is like a mirror for us in some ways to project back onto. And like there is a tendency always for a generation to look into antiquity or in ancient history to find something justifying or reifying about their own either just personal beliefs or larger kind of cultural values. So this isn't a coherent thought. But other than that, the kind of key difference here is interesting is that the Thermians model their society on the historical documents. So it would be like almost like somebody like picking up like Midsummer Night's Dream and being like, we're going to model our entire culture on this play.
Yeah. Well, and that's what that's what the fan culture is too, right?
Yeah. But like
to a degree.
Structure a whole,
to a degree, yeah.
Yeah. Like structure a whole society around it, you know, and the values that are instilled and then there's also where the movie is, there's kind of an interesting idea or a thesis even just about art or like, you know, mimesis or acting or things like that, where like it's fake, it's conceits, it's tricks, it's things like that. But like it also kind of gets at something real, like the values, the lessons, the ideas, the models, the courage that it inspires, you know, like that's real, which is kind of the hopeful, right? Because Saris is like a cynical reader of this text, right? Where he's like, this is deception and it's an opiate or it's a palliate for dealing with harsh realities. And then versus like the sort of positive reading that the movie ends on, where it's like, this can be uplifting and inspiring and helpful for people, even if it's totally conceit and fake. But
yeah, I think I like I have too many thoughts in my brain. I'm sorry. But like the idea that like, oh, they're trying to trick us, or like the more cynical like reading of either like a text, the historical documents, or I'm thinking of A Space too, of like the chomping things. It's like, yeah, that's not necessarily, it doesn't have a purpose. It's not meant to like do anything, but it also was part of something, right? Like it was part of the original story, and it did have a purpose of like giving the characters something to fight through. And so it does technically have a purpose, even if it's like ridiculously out of context in a quote unquote real world. And so like, yeah, maybe it's like where they're tricking you, or it's not real, or it's just stupid, but it's also funny maybe to them as well. Like, yeah, whoever wrote this episode should die, right? But it's like they did write it, and it was fun to watch. And I'm, you know, thinking about an lustral basin now of like, who knows what we did with a lustral basin. And like, yeah, maybe they were in on the joke too. They were like, yeah, it's not watertight, but we're gonna pour shit in it because it's fun. Or yeah, I think the humor and the just like for kicks and giggles is maybe not something we always attribute to the past.
Mm-hmm.
But to that like uplifting message, it's like, yeah, people in the past also liked to laugh and enjoyed smiling and liked jokes, as we know.
Yep.
And so, yeah, like how do we read humor into things? I think is continually funny and evolving, right?
Yeah.
You're getting at almost like kind of like there's a sort of almost ritualist interpretation where like there's the story that creates the model, like the story creates the ship chompers, right?
Yes.
The like smashing things for us to go through, and then real life mimics the story. So like we're gonna recreate the ship, but we got to have the chompers because that's like part of the story, even if they serve no actual functional purpose. So the chompers are in, and then if for whatever reason, right, the ship were to be uncovered by like a space archaeologist, to be like, what's the point of this thing in the ship that clearly serves no function? And then it's like, there's the ritual, it's recreating the ritual, etc. I'm reminded of if you go to Epidavros in Greece, there's this one temple of Tholos. It's like it's a round temple, and it's covered up now, but at the museum you can see there's like a weird substructure to the temple that's like kind of this like maze sort of thing. In basically the temple's basement, and it has perplexed people for ages of like, is this some kind of ritual thing? Like, what's going on?
Is it where
here?
they kept the sacred snakes?
Yes, exactly. That's my favorite theory. That's where they kept the sacred snakes.
Snakes want to be entertained. You know what? Snakes do need enrichment, so let's build them a little maze. Why not?
Yeah, because we all know the snakes love to hang out in underground dark chambers. That's
what Indiana Jones taught me.
I was like, to bring it back to like in like Lost City of D or Indiana Jones, where it's like there's snakes in the temple. Why are there snakes in the temple? Because the story has snakes in the temple, and now we repeat that motif
exactly.
And now we put the snakes go in the hole.
Yeah, I think what is really interesting about this movie too is it introduces a concept that's not necessarily tied to archaeology or anything, but if you could perfectly build the environment in which people experienced in their real life or in their acting life, in this case, could they actually then become the characters that would have become real by creating the space as being real? Because Laredo's the easy example, right? Of like, he drove like it all the time and he watched a video of himself driving it, and lo and behold, he can drive it because it was built in the way that it was depicted. And I'm like, this is more philosophical than I ever thought this movie was.
I was like, Christy, that's the most anthropologist question that I've ever heard.
It makes me want, so this goes back to the visual culture aspect too. Like, we do profit quite a bit as archaeologists when there's some kind of visual element as well as like a written description. Like, for instance, you couldn't build the ship without like schematics or other people breaking down information that isn't just presented to you in the film itself, right? Like, I imagine it's not really done in the movie, but it's like, I imagine historical records include like what the fans have created as part of
if you go down into Star Trek lore at all, like if you go to Memory Alpha, the like wiki dedicated to Star Trek, there are like schematics and maps. We know exactly how many floors each version of the Enterprise has, like what each floor does, like there's various tubes, and like they're even like the principle. I mean, it's kind of made up science, but like the scientific principles of faster than light travel are like explained. It's a lot of fun, but also like it gets to that.
And it's like, if an archaeologist 1,000 years came across that trove of knowledge, would they then believe that in the past the Enterprise and its crew existed because there is all this information about it?
Yeah.
But also, then can you realistically recreate an imagined world or the past in this case?
And in theory, yeah.
Like part of some of the principles the Enterprise runs on like don't exist yet, and we need a physicist to tell us if they're actually possible. But yeah, I guess part of it is like, I think like maybe right now, like how big it. Let me look up something really quick.
2 hours later.
Oh man, there's a lot of data to sift through. Hang on.
Might refresh my beverage if you're gonna.
Oh, here we go. Oh, I can't. This picture is too blurry. Anyways, the point I'm getting at is the Enterprise is absolutely ginormous, and I think just the amount of resources to assemble. I guess in theory we could build the Enterprise, but economically, it's not
Fair
really
enough.
viable.
To further that idea that like I keep thinking termites in my head because that's what Tim Allen kept squealing. Thermians.
He called them something different every time.
I know.
Like,
The Thermians.
Thermidorians.
Yeah,
That's
something
my
like that.
favorite.
They at one point say like they couldn't actually do something in the ship, even though because they'd perfectly replicated it as the show for humans, basically. And even though they've
Sorry.
okay. No, I was gonna
This
say,
is
even
my
though they say go.
This is my big question because a huge plot point revolves around the Omega-13 device.
Yeah.
Which, like, in the show is like something that they found, but that yet this is the one part where the movie gets a little hand wavy and like CinemaSins' brain gets a little hung up. I'm like, wait a minute. So like, did the Thermians build the Omega-13 device? And then if so, like how? Because the whole point is that nobody knows what it does. It's some weird alien artifact. Or did they also find it? Like, I don't, this is the one part that like to me doesn't make, it's like the one part of the ship that I'm like, how do they recreate that?
I will say that again, I think like you couldn't have recreated this ship just on the show alone, right? I think you would have had to go to what the fandom had created around it. And Justin Long's character gives us the correct answer of like what it does because people had so much theorized what it was that they probably have come up with an explanation of like how you would make it if this is what it did.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like all we know is that it's some kind of tremendous source of energy or something. But
yeah, it's squiggly. It's that's what I think. My thought was like, well, if they can't really make the ship function, and they had to separate, right? Like they had to take the deck, the command deck with them to get back. What do the Thermians do now?
Well, no, they're in the rest of the ship. So the Enterprise can do this thing sometimes where like the top deck and the bridge can like come apart from the rest of the ship if they need to, escape or go somewhere else or lose some weight or whatever. But no, I think like, the idea is that like the rest of like 85% of the ship just flies off and goes back into space with the Thermians. And then just that top part comes down into orbit with the crew.
But for the Thermians, can they still drive the ship?
Yeah. They could.
Okay.
They built the whole thing.
I feel like they can do whatever the
that is true. Like they are the engineers of like the Imagineer engineers that Walt Disney wishes he would.
Yeah, when Tim Allen goes up the first time, they're flying the ship and stuff.
Yeah.
But their main problem that they identify is not with like any like technical capability. It's that the problem is with leadership and that they get like tricked by Saris. They can't deal with Saris at that like human level.
Mm-hmm.
It's Chen's thing, like when he has to like zap things into the ship or out of that they said they couldn't do. There was something like they said they had tried and they could not.
It's more art than science. Like it's more like Tech Sergeant Chen's got the like the finesse to be able to use. He also says that they built it for. I'm like having a moment of self-realization. He says that they built it for human anatomy, so they've never been able to successfully test it.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So movie's covering its own bases there.
It really is. Yeah. Well, I'm also thinking when Mathazar is giving them like the first big tour and he's showing them like the medical bay or whatever. He's like, yeah, we had such a hard time with the organ rejuvenation something or the organs, and they like created weird, crazy advanced medical things like for humans, but I think they can't use it themselves because it's based on human anatomy, which is so weird and very funny.
Yeah. Okay. So new question then is the Thermians, what kind of beings were they before being exposed to Galaxy Quest?
They say like our people like suffered for thousands of years of like being taken advantage of and indecision.
And Tinal is not listening,
like,
so we're not listening.
Yeah, he does there is the thing, like he does start explaining their whole history.
Yeah.
And then Tim Allen like passes
like
out.
5 million years ago.
Yes. So like there is, as far as we're aware, there is a deep, rich history of like what they were going through. But the important thing, as the movie sort of economically tells us, is just like they kind of came into their own when they discovered the historical documents. It's like they had their renaissance in a way, right?
Yeah.
Like it was.
Yeah, it's just like that's what I find so interesting is we could say like a renaissance, but it's like they had wholly adapted a culture, right, around this one show, and to the point that they even changed their forms to somewhat resemble the people on that show. Although I think it obviously was Spock references because the haircut and the pointy ears, a lot of them were definitely a throwback to that. I guess that's kind of a really interesting anthropological thought as well is, do we have other examples of like groups of people just wholly adopting another culture without making any real changes to it?
Oof.
I don't know.
I mean, I feel like they probably did make changes to it unintentionally, just being a different society.
I would say even somewhat facetiously and somewhat seriously, like we're kind of doing that with Greece, Rome, Egypt, and other ancient cultures of like, right. The way we adopt those cultures are not really super true, or like, as we understand, like this whole show is kind of predicated on like talking about the gap between what we know and how we receive. And so like, there is a certain way that like, yeah, like 300 or Gladiator or something like that is kind of a Galaxy Quest thing of like antiquity.
Yeah.
That we're sort of receiving without a lot of the kind of necessary contextual information, even like the idea of gladiators or is something we're kind of absorbing without maybe a whole lot of the contextual kind of background. But I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like this one is just such an extreme version of it because I don't think we could truly imagine adopting another culture without bringing some of our own past experience into it and shaping that in some way.
Well, which is why kind of the Thermians are sort of interesting because they're so blank slatey in some ways.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, they're so childlike, which. Right?
Yeah.
Like when Saris is like, explain to him as if he were a child.
That they have no conception of like, it's like lies or something they're like kind of beginning to figure out. And deception and deceit, like irony, right? We're not there. They're not there yet.
Yeah. Like they can understand what a lie is, but they don't actually lie until Malthazar does at the very end with like a sort of trick. And like developmentally that happens in 3-year-olds, 3-year-old humans for the most part. So like... Yeah, I think that why their presence in the show maybe bothers me to an extent is because it does feel like their own culture, their own history is like completely removed. We only know them as they are now, having had this influence on them. And I think that's kind of a problem we deal with in archaeology and anthropology, right? Is like I remember reading Boardman being like, oh, the Sicilians had no real culture of their own, so they just wholesale adopt Greek culture when the Greeks start colonizing. Like that is an idea that has been present in our scholarly research of the past. And I don't like that this movie is almost reinforcing that as a possibility.
I see that. I definitely do. And like the whole idea of like Romanization, right, is like, oh, everybody just automatically knows that Romans are better, so they just then become Romans, and we call it Romanization, which thankfully has been like heavily questioned in recent scholarship and is obviously much more nuanced as a discussion now. But I feel like I see the Thermians as much more of like a collective, like they're much more numerous than like the original, crew of Galaxy Quest. And they've obviously kind of changed or adapted these things to accommodate all of them, like that huge row
Yeah.
the
the
barracks.
Baritol.
It's like all of them. And so they're including everybody. And I feel like the scale at which they have to kind of change and move and adapt, I feel like is showing their own collective history. And I'm probably thinking way too hard about this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add also, like, before we leap to like Thermians and real world analogies, like there's an important intermediate or a more direct sort of influence, which is Star Trek, and like particularly like 60s Star Trek, where
Yes, sure.
just that
Yeah.
show's idea of alien cultures is a little goofy sometimes, where
Definitely.
at sort of the most basic level, like most of the alien cultures are some kind of abstraction of humanity. Like the Vulcans are hyper logical, and the Klingons are hyper warlike, and this other one is like hyper sexy. And there's a lot of that sort of baked into the lore of Star Trek, of these kinds of like essentializations, and also just sometimes just plain silly things going on. Like in Next Generation, there's a spacefaring species they encounter called the Packlids, who are just like painfully stupid, to the point like they should not be flying in space. The Packlids only like encountered a spacefaring vessel like by accident. It like is basically falling. Like the episode, what happens is the Packlids kind of basically end up kidnapping Geordi, their engineer, LeVar Burton, and like holding him hostage. And most of the issue is not that the Enterprise like can't get, like, because they're like we could blow this ship out of the air, like we have far superior technology and everything. There's more of this like ethical thing of like, how do we deal with these guys? Are trying to like strong arm us. They've kidnapped our engineer. How do we get them back without like, you know, wiping them out, or like, you know, and things like that. But like the Packlids they're stupid in multiple ways. But yeah, so you get just some like goofy aliens in Star Trek, and so the Thermians like fit right into that.
Yeah.
I mean, even every single kind of, not every single, but like most Star Treks kind of, this is why this is probably such a good adaptation of Star Trek, because like its premise itself is kind of a good premise for a Star Trek episode, where like an alien species uncovers a thing and like bases their whole culture around it, but it's like kind of a weird misreading or a misunderstanding, and then Starfleet has to come in and be like, wow, what do we do with this? Like, you know,
I say you let them do what they do, because they did some cool stuff with it.
Well, one of the main things with Starfleet is the Prime Directive, which is you're not allowed to influence or alter the natural course of a sort of society or civilization. And there are sometimes exceptions where like sometimes like, you know, there's something going to happen, like a asteroid's going to come and like wipe out life on this planet, and Starfleet will save the planet, but the planet can't never know that happened.
Right.
And then, you know, I think in the second Star Trek movie, the J.J. Abrams one, there's kind of a joke about this, that like they see the ship and then they start worshiping the ship as a god. And now,
which is why
I do think is like kind of problematic, because we're setting ourselves up as the ancient aliens who are like bringing untold and unheard of knowledge to like quote unquote primitive species in the universe, which I don't love. Like, it's not maybe quite as terrible as ancient aliens giving us old information. I don't know. Which one's worse? That we're the ancient aliens?
There's a whole other extra layer where if you watch, I think it's the 7th movie, it's the first one with the Next Generation crew, First Contact, where in like Star Trek universe history, a guy named Zephyrin Cochrane invents a faster than light spaceship, tests it out, a Vulcan ship that happens to be nearby sees it, makes first contact, and then the general rule is like once the civilization discovers faster than light travel, then we can like introduce them into the galactic society and like get them up to speed. And then in Star Trek sort of history lore, the 21st century was really rough. There was like a bunch of like wars and kind of a nuclear holocaust thing, and then this event basically like reinvigorates human society. The spaceship that led to first contact with the Vulcans, and then we like redid our entire society to create in like a post-scarcity communalist way so we can explore stars better. I lost where I was going with that, other than like, like for in Star Trek lore, like our contact with the Vulcans is like what helps like launch us into the future. That's not exactly ancient aliens. That's more of a encountering another civilization.
And there is historical precedent in our world as well, like the cargo cults, where people for the first time saw planes and things. So they replicated what they looked like with the materials present, easily available to them. So it's not to say like this doesn't happen. I think the kind of the important thing is there evidence for it having happened or not, right? Like that's what it comes down at the end of the day is like, you know, maybe we do become the ancient aliens for another culture at some point, but then one would hope that that culture would then recognize, oh, here's the evidence of who that was or that it actually happened versus we have no evidence of that here.
Sure.
In Starfleet's own ethos, we're not supposed to be doing that at all.
Right.
Like, period.
Yeah.
We're only supposed to make contact with them once they start space traveling. And then it's a diplomatic thing, not a we're going down and like, we're not going down and like helping them build pyramids and cryptically leaving clues to our existence.
Yeah.
Creating star gates and things like this.
Exactly.
Yeah. Maps back to find us. Mm-hmm.
And the prime directive is exactly why anthropologists love Star Trek is because like that's ethnography in a nutshell, right? Like you go
100%.
and try to understand and learn about all of these different groups that exist in the world, beyond the world, without actually interfering with in their way of life. And there's actually a lot of people, there's huge discussion in anthropology of like, well, to get the best kind of information, how much do you need to integrate with the people and build rapport? Or can you truly be a unbiased observer without any interaction? I think that's stupid. But at the end of the day, we're also all human at the end of the day too. So like, it's an interesting discussion. And something tells me that even though the prime directive exists, most of the Star Trek movies often fail in the prime directive.
I mean, Kirk breaks that shit like all the time,
All
but
the
there's usually,
time.
there's usually some reason for it.
Otherwise, it's like, I mean, that, you know, same as why I wouldn't read an ethnography from someone who didn't actually talk to anyone of the group. They just watched them behind a one-way mirror, two-way mirror, whatever, and you can't get like, I don't know, good information that way by any means.
I almost wonder, I don't think there is one, but I almost wonder if there is a Star Trek episode where Starfleet like encounters another culture that has been like aping it from afar, and they're like, oh man, that feels like that's like a classic Star Trek episode. But
yeah, that must exist.
Well, we've done a lot of the plot, but not necessarily specific characters.
I think we talked a little bit about Tim Allen and
little bit.
Yeah.
He's very Kirk-like. He has the sit in his chair in that very like William Shatner kind of way.
Tim Allen is a huge Star Trek fan himself, which is why he
makes a lot of sense.
Did this and why he's kind of so engaged because he's so into it. Apparently, I think Harold Ramis supposedly wanted Alec Baldwin first for us. There was a couple other casting things I heard, but Tim Allen wasn't their first choice necessarily, but it worked out.
It did.
And then you get Rickman, who's kind of like Leonard Nimoy-esque, right? Or he's like maybe a little more serious actor. Or I really sense like maybe this is just me, but I sense some Picard and Patrick Stewart in him. It's like I am a classically trained, serious working actor, and I gotta like stoop to this shit.
Yeah.
Sigourney. We should talk about Sigourney.
That's kind of what I was going into,
Like such a sci-fi queen in such a weird role. I think really reflecting the kind of bizarre place that a lot of female characters have, especially in old school sci-fi stories where
my interview was 2 paragraphs about how my boobs fit into my suit.
Exactly, yes. Because by the end of the movie, her shirt is like open and she's just like essentially just wearing a bra. But like her one job is to repeat what the computer says and to talk to the computer.
Which is kind of like Uhura like doesn't really have a lot to do on the original Enterprise. Like her job is a little nebulous.
I will say that part of it feels a lot more relatable today. So we have a lot of don't do anything Alexas around our place. And Andy has like attached lights to her and things like that. And the number of times I have to scream at Alexa to turn on the living room light, but you have to say it the exact right way. before it does what it's told. So like having Tim Allen say something and like it doesn't react, and then Sigourney says it in this very calm voice, like computer. And I'm like, why is this so relatable? Probably much more relatable now than it was when this
I just
came out.
You show her breakdown. He's like, I have one job on this ship. It's stupid, I know, but I'm gonna do it.
It's to get Alexa to work.
Talk to the computer. That was my whole thing.
So I disagree, and Andy hasn't seen it recently, but he believed that she played a ditzy or airhead character. An airhead character is what he said. Yeah, I totally disagree with that take.
No.
Well, there's the meta thing of like, right, Sigourney as, like Eli said, queen of sci-fi, right? She's Ripley. She's, she is is groundbreaking female lead. And then so there's the meta-ness of like slotting her in this like secretary position.
Yes. Yeah. When we know that she's such a capable badass, and like in our heads, I'm seeing her fight the alien queen in her robot, like her giant yellow robot shell. And yeah, just putting her in this weird place. I think it's really calling attention to the ridiculousness or the absurdity of putting such capable characters, such smart and capable and knowledgeable people into such dumb positions. And I think it's much more like pointing an arrow at, this is dumb and look how cool she can be. And like, she does really break out of that ditzy role. She doesn't do dumb shit, she says smart stuff. I remember when they're running from the little blue guys, she's like, let's get out of here before they kill Guy. Like she's thinking, right?
She has the line of the show is when they see the choppers and she goes, well, that.
I will say, going back to the scene of the little blue guys, she's also, because she's the only woman, she plays up this feminine role of, she sees them as like, oh, they look like children, they're so cute, and not recognizing the danger of the situation, which it kind of runs counter to like everything else that I've seen of her character. Like that moment was kind of like it ended up accidentally playing into the tropes they were trying to like address or highlight.
Then you get like, Sam Rockwell being like, did you even watch the show?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I also think like we could turn around and like say the same thing to Sam Rockwell, right? Of like when he's like, is there air? It's like, have you watched the show? Like, yes, there's air. Like, it's fine. We're going to be fine. But I do agree that they kind of walked into that, but it almost feels intentional. Like they're still kind of pointing fingers at, roles that we expect people to fall into versus like the actual outcome of the stories. All of it feels very meta to me. Even that moment of like, oh, it's cute, and then it's gonna eat you.
I think I would have just found it more funny if it was Chen in that moment who was saying it.
Yeah,
because like he just seems super chill. It's like, oh, what are you guys all worried about? I don't know. Is there more to say about Laredo and his character?
He's like a Will Wheaton. There's always there's like a kid,
the child actor.
Yeah.
That's like a lot of the jokes are about how he used to be a child actor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you guys know? I didn't realize this, that like he got into an accident like 2 years after this and was paralyzed.
No, I did not know that.
He was in a motorcycle accident, and so. There's a bit more to the story, but there was a couple of people, some other Black comedians that worked to like get him some acting gigs again. So I think he was on a couple of seasons of a TV show where he performed as an actor in a wheelchair, and he built up a foundation to like help support people with spinal cord injuries and things like that.
Oh, that's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Daryl Mitchell, by the way.
Daryl Mitchell, yeah. So random thing I saw as I was barely researching this, because I was going with all the vibes this time. But that story came out, and I thought that was cool and wanted to shout that out. So
yeah, definitely.
let's see. We've touched on Justin Long a little bit, but I think it'd be fun to talk a little bit about the fandom and like the conference situation. Also, along with Justin Long, it's like I love he has his little geek squad, but they're not like, again, it's not overplayed. Like you see them getting bullied or anything. Like they're in an environment where they thrive. They have a diverse friend group that is just really into it, and they're all supportive of each other.
Yeah.
And like have a Zoom chat going in 1999.
I know. It's so cute.
And I'm like, what? Was that a thing? Man, they've got some pretty good cameras.
I mean, like internet forums, like, I mean, yeah, like in the late 90s, I mean, Star Trek was a thing, but like there was this like weird, not weird. There was this internet subculture like existing in like in a lot of the ways of like fan communities. And like we meant like same year, but Star Wars Episode 1 comes out, which is like, to my mind, one of the films that really has like one of the first true, this is probably actually false, but like one of the first true kind of like internet like forum things that really like there's like rumors circulating and all sorts of news is getting passed around on the internet. And we're only a few years out from like internet fan culture like really taking off.
Yeah.
You know, like 5 years later, it's a completely different world. It's funny that this movie comes out in 99 where like fandom, I mean, yeah, just geeks and fandom are just in a very different world, right?
Yeah.
Cons are these kinds of like goofy, somewhat sad sort of events. Like there's something a little like kind of dopey and pathetic where now like Comic-Con is like a huge major. It's like Lollapalooza or like Coachella or something.
Yeah.
And also like geek culture is mainstream culture.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's weird. I saw like a TikTok or something the other day talking about like how conferences now are
Conventions.
Thank you. Conventions. Like it's the same difference. We're all nerding out to something. Conventions. It was about a convention. How like people who go and like when they're not in a panel or something, it's like they don't know what to do, and it's because in part like this younger generation is afraid of being cringe, and I'm just like hanging out and doing stuff, like having fun, like being childlike in those spaces, because there's this growing fear of like someone recording you and posting it and you're being humiliated by that, even though you're all celebrating something that like 15 years ago would have easily gotten you humiliated. And it's like, that's so weirdly interesting that you can be nerdy in a wrong way somehow. Like,
and also like cosplayers now are like a class of model where like if you go to see cosplayers at these cons and they're basically supermodels just dressed as characters from, you know, whatever your favorite anime.
Yeah, but also like artists too, right?
Yeah.
Like they a lot of times create a lot of the things that they wear, and it's kind of crazy the stuff that they can do. Taking something from an animation to a real world something is kind of wild.
I wonder if it's like one of those things that because really creative people have taken, you know, taking the art form so far that people who are new to that space are like feel like, you know, the same reason that people our age feel like, oh, I can't draw, I'm not a good artist. It's like you could if you just took the time to keep developing the skill and not care about people's reactions to it.
Yeah.
And that's something that's really hard to do.
We're coming up on a larger sort of critique of like just like social media culture in general and what it does to creative endeavors. But or even just like the central premise of this movie that these actors are all a little bit washed up and a little like over the hill or like sad, or like when it cuts kind of between is like, I think one of the great bits of like character work is in the beginning where it's sort of cutting between their different apartments, and like Tim Allen is like Hollywood sad. Like he has money, but he's like kind of a sad old drunk. And like Alan Rickman lives in just like grubby apartment. That they're not like super famous, right? That they have to go to open car dealerships and things like that. Whereas now people who are on Star Trek get taken up into space by billionaires or are headlining cons or are revitalizing the show, right? And like, so, you know, Patrick Stewart gets 3 seasons of Picard and they all come back. They have very different sort of afterlives after their show, as opposed to like in the 90s, someone who was on a show in like, you know, 2 decades prior, or no, what does he say? When he says the last episode of Galaxy Quest aired?
80 something, I feel like. So it's only been like a decade.
I will say the other one random nostalgia bit that I got was when Justin Long is running out of the house with an armful of Roman candles. And his mom stops him and he gives like a quick explanation. And mom's just like, okay. And he just goes. And dad looks at her and she just responds like, at least he's getting out of the house. And I'm like, that was my childhood right there. Was like, there's a little bit, it's like, what are you doing? And it's like, no. They're like, okay, at least you're out of the house. At least you're not.
This is Justin Long's first film credit.
That's adorable. I love that. Ah.
And then 2 years later, he's in Jeepers Creepers.
Okay. Yeah.
Is he American Pie? Who is that?
No. Are you thinking of Sean William Scott or the guy with like the lacrosse player guy? Or the main guy? The guy
Oh,
Pie?
the main guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Jason Biggs. That's his name.
Okay. I didn't think it was Justin Long, but that was same era that I was connecting.
Contemporaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Same year of birth.
Huh.
They're actually only a month apart, basically.
Okay.
Adorable.
Wait, what birthday do you have for one of them?
Jason Biggs, May 12th, 1978. Justin Long, June 2nd, 1978.
God, they're all both 10 years older than me. That's feels weird.
I mean, Justin Long famously was playing teenagers like well into his 30s.
Yeah. Because he would have been 21 then in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then what's the movie where he's oh God, is it the Accepted 2006?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
He like makes the fake college because that's 2006, yep. So he would have been almost 30.
Oh Jesus!
Love it.
You know what? Good for you. Good for
you. He would have been 28 in that one.
I remember that movie.
No, I kind of hope that maybe we get over some of our fear of being cringe, because I think, I don't know, being excited about something or really being really into something has always been kind of painting a target on your back, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's shitty.
Yeah, if that thing isn't sports and you can contact sports in particular,
sports all you want, can like plaster your wall with sports.
But then we don't have time or maybe the breadth of knowledge to go through the whole arc of like thing. Because then once like something happens too, once like after like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Marvel Cinematic Universe, probably a couple of other things. Once like nerdom enters the zeitgeist or becomes the main thing, then like something else weird happens where like now it is almost basic to like Marvel comics or something like that.
And
I think Star Wars is a part of that too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Star Wars for a while was like maybe the most acceptable nerddom.
Yeah. It was the bridge that kind of moved a lot of that nerddom into the mainstream.
I mean, just the fact that like anime is so, I could throw out an anime show with someone my age or, younger, and there's at least a 50% chance that person knows what the hell I'm talking about.
Especially if it was featured on Toonami between the years of like 2001 and 2007 or whenever that special was running. Like that is the program I could like point my finger to and be like, this is what brought anime to our generation in a very like concrete way. You could chart the graph of like Inuyasha, Dragon Ball, Gundam Wing, right? There was like that lineup.
Yeah.
And like you could like chart the popularity of anime in the United States. And it's like, there's like pre and post Toonami.
Yeah.
Which for listeners under the age of 30 was a special that ran on Cartoon Network, basically introducing anime to American audiences. Yep. And it came out a little later.
Bleach.
Naruto, that's what's in my head. Yeah.
It was geared a little older, right? It was kind of targeted at like teens.
As we've established, I was watching things that maybe were not age appropriate.
I think Naruto scared me, actually. I think some early episode that I watched when I was far too young, I was like, this is creepy. I don't like it.
Yeah. Orochimaru was pretty creepy character. So yeah. Well, to bring it all back, like one of my favorite another Channing Tatum movie is 21 Jump Street, and like the whole premise of like he goes back to high school and he's the jock, like he was popular. It's like, all right, there's a nerd wearing his backpack, right?
Not caring about stuff is now uncool or like
exactly.
So I think that's kind of an astute observation that we could see something else.
If we made Galaxy Quest today, it would be a fundamentally different
Yeah.
Kind of like
100%.
all of the fan component, especially. I mean, like the show is also has changed a lot in the last, how many in the decades of Star Trek. Because when Galaxy Quest come out, Next Generation was about a decade old, I guess. Just ended. Deep Space Nine is kind of the main thing, I think.
I feel like you would almost have to do it as like the crew would actually have to be like social influencers or like people who are not actually in the show but are super fans of the show.
Yeah, like I don't even know if it would work like at all. Like because there's something about like in 1999, like the cultural moment of like where Star Trek's at. Like there's Star Trek's coming out, but there's also the old ones that people, because like they were only like a couple decades old, but like the people remember. Like and like now, like Star Trek is just a different beast.
Yeah, like almost Chris Pine is almost too old to play the new Star Trek. This is so weird. That's not ew. How long ago it came out? I hate it. But yeah, so I almost wonder if like maybe musical theater is the next big thing.
Isn't it already a thing?
I mean,
Isn't it?
No, because it's still so restricted in like audience, in terms of audience, like who can actually go and watch or see a majority of them. It's really hard. It's still really hard to access.
Think about like your high school drama clubs, like the songs that everybody's listening to, like the ballads that everybody wants to sing at their high school and state competitions, like that. I remember being in that world, and like that was a big deal. It was.
Fair. I also forgot that Glee happened, so like
yeah, I was like, I feel like we've had that.
We have had that, yeah. So who knows at this point? Yeah. It is very difficult to imagine the premise of this movie today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, specific to Star Trek, just because Star Trek is changed a lot. I don't know.
Oh my God. Did you guys remember that Supernatural episode where they go to a supernatural convention in the episode and they like they have like a whole meta episode of the actors being not themselves but their characters like going to a convention for themselves, and I'm remembering that now in like a crazy flashback.
Is that like Timothée Chalamet showing up at a lookalike Timothée Chalamet contest and not
essentially
winning?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
The meta aspect of it all is like just going back and back and back on itself.
I'm also wondering with that question is like, if we showed this to a 20-year-old, this movie, would they enjoy it as much as we did?
I don't know. That's a good question. I wonder because like what Star Trek was to us when we were kids, or at least like even if you weren't really watching it actively, like the osmosis knowledge of like the nature of the show was that kind of like there's the hokiness. I think that's kind of the key element is like original Star Trek is kind of hokey, and even the newer ones in the 90s, the relatively newer ones at the 90s still were like operating on certain, there's like tropes and premises and repeat things. Like there's always a holodeck episode, or the kinds of Star Trek plots that were out there had to do with the way the shows were made. Now, like the new Star Trek shows, which like are good, like Strange New Worlds, totally rips, but is like the production value of that show is like, it's awesome. It looks great. It doesn't have like, there is also that kind of, there's like the hokiness, like there's a sort of quick blink and you'll miss it part in this movie where they kind of are showing, it's at the con, I think at the beginning, and they're showing like reruns of old episodes, and Tim Allen is fighting some kind of monster, which is just a callback to like a very infamous Star Trek where Kirk fights that lizard man in that painfully slow, awkward fight.
But I was thinking of that also when he's on that planet with the pig fighting the pig thing and then the rock thing. Yeah. It's like they're scaling that up, right? Of like he's talking on his little comm and he's fighting the weird pig monster. And yeah, that struck me as very Kirk versus lizard.
That is exactly how I fought off turkeys before. Just swing my sweater around. I think it also all goes back to like what I loved about this movie is that it was fun. It took itself serious enough that, you know, it didn't feel like a huge farce or anything like that. And it also wasn't trying to either be a blockbuster movie nor win the award season. And I think a lot of the movies of 99
It did make less money than it wanted, I think.
I'm sure, but but I went and looked at Rotten Tomatoes. This thing has pretty good ratings still.
Oh, like it's beloved. Like it, but it exists. It kind of became a cult thing where like its initial, I think it made like 70 something.
I don't feel like I'm part of a cult. I don't.
Yeah. like Screen Junkies made a documentary about this film for its like 15th anniversary.
Is that Never Surrender?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like it has an interesting kind of cult following, in that it's, like I said at the beginning, kind of being like incorporated into Star Trek lore, or like it's sort of unofficially part of the Star Trek canon. I mean, I think, like, to the first question, I think a younger audience, like, it's still funny. Like the jokes still work. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure there are young Star Trek fans out there, and then people like are going back and revisiting stuff.
Yeah.
Or like if you've seen like Lower Decks, it's a very similar conceit where, I mean, a lot, that's a little because they own the IP, so they can like make very specific jokes to very specific episodes and call out like kind of goofy plot conventions.
Yeah, this is definitely a movie I would take a chance being like me being cringe and being like, all right, you 20-year-old, you teenager, we're going to watch this because I think it's funny and enjoyable and you'll like it. I would do it with The Mummy. Like there's certain movies that like, you know what? I'll take a chance and maybe it'll blow up in my face. But like, I can't see people not liking this. Like it aged super well as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree.
And that's my take.
I love it. Right. I think that might be.
Should we walk us out?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
You are
right. Not doing
it.
All right. Finallys, or why finally? Just hey, y'all. Special thanks to all our listeners. We cannot produce episodes like this without your support. That being said, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe if you like what you hear. You can find all our episodes at movieswedig.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to know more about upcoming plans and episode releases, be sure to follow us on social media, where you can find us on most platforms under some variation of the handle at Movies We Dig. We'll talk to you again soon with me, Christy's pick for our favorite film. Any guesses? We know who's in it.
I know the answer.
Yeah, you know the answer.
I can see the schedule. So
this is true. All right, we'll leave it to the listeners. Any guesses? I'll give you a hint. Channing Tatum is in it. So.
Why wouldn't he be?
Why wouldn't he be?
Right.
A young Channing Tatum. That's key, I think.
Does he age? I saw him in Deadpool. He does not look any different.
A pre-Magic Mike Channing Tatum, maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
How about that? Yes.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
That does narrow it down for folks a little bit.
That's true. Also true. Yes.
All right. And with that, we say, I don't know. What do we say?
You are our last hope.
And goodbye.